Good morning. Thank you for having us. We appreciate you, Brad and Nicole, for giving us the opportunity to present for Oregon RTI in this amazing conference. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the flow of this morning and share a little bit of information as an overview or a review of dyslexia and some common learning differences we all will see in our classrooms. And then I'll have my colleague Shelby take over, and she'll share some assistive technology information, and we'll get to hear a good long while from our students and their stories with dyslexia. One of our students couldn't make it this morning due to injury, but we'll be able to share some of her thoughts. We'll have time at the end to answer some questions, so if you have questions that come up, please feel free to put those in the question and answer section, or just hang on to them, and you'll have some time before we go to hear from the students directly. So I wanted to share with you about dyslexia and again, have that be a review or an overview, because it is a very common learning difference that's in our classroom, but often it's undiagnosed or it hasn't been discovered yet. But dyslexia is a specific learning difference or a specific learning disability. It's neurobiological in origin. It's characterized by difficulties with accurate and or fluent word recognition, poor spelling, and decoding abilities. And these difficulties often result as a deficit in the phonological component of language, and it's often unexpected relative to other strengths that a student might show. The International Dyslexia Association characterizes the symptoms of dyslexia as many as up to 20% have these symptoms of dyslexia with difficulties in reading or accurate or fluent word recognition. And like I said, many don't know it or have been undiagnosed. And dyslexia runs in families. It's neurological in origin. The students' language abilities are not tied to their intelligence, and dyslexia often occurs with other learning differences or comorbid conditions. You may hear from our students that they have dysgraphia along with dyslexia, which can look like impaired handwriting or impaired spelling, or both impaired handwriting and spelling. And dysgraphia can impact a student's ability to store written words in their working memory, and also the ability to create that permanent memory of written words, and that's linked to their pronunciation and to meaning. You may have students in your classroom with dyscalculia, with difficulties in mathematical reasoning and computation. They'll show a poor memory for numbers and time sequences, and often a strength in their language skills. Dyscalculia can also have present as a confusion, anxiety when number-related tasks are there. We also have twice exceptional students who may be identified gifted students and identified as having a learning disability or learning difference. It also could be students who have a learning disability or learning difference and their giftedness has not yet been identified. And then you may also have unidentified students in both realms whose gift and disabilities might be masked by average intelligence. Along with these learning differences or learning disabilities in the classroom, you often have that compounded by comorbid conditions such as ADD or ADHD, which can occur 40% of the time in our students with dyslexia. And the subsequent anxiety and depression that can go along with having a learning difference, not realizing it, and continually questioning yourself or the place that you're receiving your education, and wondering what it is that could be different because you are trying so hard and you're not seeing the outcome that you are hoping for. Thanks to Dr. Fumiko Haft, we're able to share this image of different brain patterns that we can see in students with dyslexia and students without dyslexia. There's a different neural signature in the way that people with dyslexia's brain process language-related tasks. And we often will see through fMRIs an overcompensation in the frontal lobe in the right and the left side, and an underactivation in the areas of the brain that are important for phonological processing and grapheme phoneme association, and areas of the brain that are also important for orthographic processing. As you can see with the smaller blue and green circles, compared to the brain patterns that someone without dyslexia shows through fMRIs. When doing language-related tasks, those areas on the left side of the brain often work in concert very efficiently after reading instruction has taken place to produce people who are reading in an efficient, like superhighway pathway of their brain. And you can see the difference in size in the blue circles and the green circles there. In the left temporal parietal region and the left occipitotemporal region. So the learning difference or learning disability is in the brain. And while many of you in this room likely know this already, I always like to show this slide as a reminder because often our students with dyslexia or adults with dyslexia who have never been identified continually measure themselves and what they accomplish through the lens of a brain pathway organization that's different than their own, and having a recognition that their brain operates in a different way when processing language related tasks can be helpful for understanding why the right type of instruction and structured literacy is helpful, and accommodations are so important, and assistive technology so important and necessary as well. And it helps to level the playing field. So if you've encountered us before in any presentation, chances are you've done some type of a simulation with dyslexia. And what I want to do is just give you a brief experience before you get to hear from our students, to have you have a sense of that struggle and that feeling of things not going the way that you want, no matter how hard you're trying. So if you've seen this particular simulation before, that's okay. Please do it along with everyone else. And hopefully, maybe you've improved. Maybe you've gotten better at this. We'll see. So what I want to have you do is, if you've got it handy, get something to write with. I'm going to show you some information. I want to have you take notes on that information as our do now activity for the introduction to our class today. Please take notes on the key points. I'm going to give you a quiz after you take your notes, and you'll be able to use your notes, so it should be no problem for you. I do want to impose a restriction of having you write your notes with your non-dominant hand. Okay, so 2 minutes. Take notes on the passage that I'll show you in just a second on the next slide, and then we'll take a quiz. Okay, this should be easy. We just went over this information yesterday in class, and I'm sure you've got this. But here at the end of our 12-week progress report period, this quiz is going to be worth 1,000,000 points, but I'm sure you'll do just fine. Okay, go ahead and get started writing key points that will help you out on your quiz questions. Remember, we just went over this, so I'm sure you'll be okay, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to take notes. And while you're doing that, I'll just make sure we've got all the key people here. So I'll be taking attendance. I see Shelby is here. And we've got Emma's here. Good. Meg is here. Juan is here. Good. Bella. Oh, yep, got you. All right. Good. Mark. He's here too. Excellent. Okay, chances are you've got your information down. So go ahead and hang on to your notes. And now tackle these questions. What geographic area is mentioned in this passage? Can you be sure and cite some evidence to support your answer? And then can you write down the main idea of the passage? quite a few of you have finished. It looks like you maybe didn't even start. So if we go back to the passage for a second, maybe we should spend some more time with this. Maybe we should read this aloud so that we can understand the content better. How would you feel if I were going to call on you here and have you unmute and go ahead and try to read this out loud? Not so excited about that? All right. Then I won't do that. If you don't know Welsh, that made that difficult. If you felt rushed for time or interrupted by your teacher making, attendance remarks in the background, that could have made this process difficult. Looking up and reading from a screen can be difficult for our students. If you were trying to take notes on this Welsh passage, chances are, if you don't know Welsh, you had to attend to letter by letter in order to remember the sequence to then write it down. If you did use your non-dominant hand, your handwriting was probably labored, and you didn't have spelling patterns retained. You didn't have a lot of vocabulary retained for quick and effortless retrieval in this language that you weren't able to decode or even maybe sound out. And listening and writing at the same time might have been interfered with. We do this very short simulation to have you experience some difficulty in not being able to crack the alphabetic code, not having enough time, also not being able to respond to the demands of the task, even if you may have been trying your best. We know that good reading instruction can help change the brain, and our students can activate efficient pathways if they're taught in an explicit, systematic, multimodal way. Structured literacy is that umbrella term. And we can tell from these brain images after a year of reading intervention in structured literacy that our children with dyslexia begin to use those left side pathways more efficiently. And this instruction or intervention doesn't take as long when we find our students early, but we know that it's never too late to teach someone how to read, write, and spell in a more efficient way. And when you know how to help a student with dyslexia learn how to read, write, and spell, you're highly equipped to be able to help all of the struggling readers that you might encounter, no matter the cause. So I didn't introduce myself at the beginning, but I'm Danielle Thompson, and I work as a high school teacher. I teach language arts and reading and intro to education. I also work as a dyslexia screener and a tutor, and I'm currently serving as president of the International Dyslexia Association. And my journey into dyslexia came about from people that I care about, finding out that they were dyslexic, and me recognizing that I needed to learn more in order to have this, to help stem this great urgency I felt to help those people that I care about, but additionally, from a great desire to do better by our students in the school system that I work in, and to try to make that be better so that by the time I see them at their senior year in language arts class, more of them know the type of learner that they are and if they have a learning difference, and more of them are better able to be equipped to access accommodations and assistive technology and not feel shame about that, but also to be able to instruct them in the way that they will learn most appropriately to read, write, and spell more efficiently, even if they are seniors in high school. So that's my motivation in talking to people about dyslexia and working with Shelby and our student panel. And here's what we know. The treatment for dyslexia looks like these things. Early screening for risk and paying attention to family history. Teaching all students how to read, write, and spell in a program that is structured to the language, starting from the simplest to the most complex. We also know that providing classroom accommodations and assistive technology, no matter how much success the student is showing in the classroom, can be very helpful to level the playing field. and we want to be able to treat any concurrent conditions. And so as we have a lot of emphasis on behavioral health, and programs that train more behavioral health specialists who work with our schools, knowledge in those programs of common learning differences or common learning disabilities, knowledge of that can be so helpful to then have one other aspect of education that has its radar up about how best to help our kids if they're showing struggles in the classroom, whether that's academically or also it spills over into behaviorally. So treatment of any concurrent conditions and knowledge of ADD or ADHD, anxiety or depression, paying attention to why a student might be running out of the classroom or hiding under the table or chewing holes in their shirt. And then also we want to be able to foster strengths in our students so that they have a knowledge of the way that they learn best, and support their passions and curiosities and interest to help them grow and thrive and have a robust future. We all benefit from classrooms that will take all of these things, or systems that will take all of these things into account. So in just a few minutes, you'll get to hear from our students and talk about fostering strengths. Every time they share their stories, we learn and take away so much, but we hope that it also empowers the students to continue to embrace the type of learner and thinker that they are, and to continue to share their experiences with others so that we all might learn and be transformed. And now I want to switch it over and have Shelby take over and talk a little bit about accommodations and assistive technology.
So our students will tell you over and over, it's the accommodations that get them through school, and it's so important. And it's the accommodations that they really actually have to fight for. Our students, it seems every year, every class are always fighting to get the accommodations they need. Some common ones are access to speech to text, audiobooks, spelling not to be graded, access to text to speech, hard copy of notes. This is really important. A lot of teachers want the students to write their notes and highlight their notes. Sometimes our students have only the ability to listen to what's going on and not write their notes. They don't have the attention to do both. They don't have the handwriting or spelling to make their notes useful when they go back to read them. So this is a really important accommodation that's often, it's kind of a struggle to get in middle school and high school. And surprisingly very easy to get if you have dyslexia in college. Our students are often surprised when they get there that this is just handed to them with no fight. Meg will talk about that later. Organization support, extra time on assignments. This is our big one for our students. We call dyslexia a time disability. It's not that we can't do it, it's that we just need more time to do the stuff that's expected. And we don't have enough time in the day sometimes to get it all done. And then a calculator for math. Our students often will not learn their math facts, and to be quick and to access higher level math, they'll need a calculator. Assistive technology, our students have noticed, it's not a one size fits all. So we have schools that you can only use this app and this has to work, but it's not, it's personal. It needs to be explicitly taught. We'll often hear the teacher say, well, the student has it, they're not using it. Sometimes the student doesn't know how to use it, and it takes time to become proficient. And they don't have quick access because oftentimes their teachers don't know how to use the technology. So it's just not useful in the classroom because it's not easy. And we also have to talk about, it's hard sometimes to be a little different and have to use your technology. So sometimes they're battling that, and sometimes they won't use their technology because of that. So Riley has a concussion. She's a cheerleader. She's our very outgoing, adventurous social butterfly. And she wants me to explain her journey with dyslexia. her most important fact is that if you saw her in the classroom, you would not know that she has dyslexia. She is an amazing student, but what you don't see is that she'll stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning to get her work done. So Riley attended a school where they knew nothing about dyslexia, but the teacher let her have any accommodation she wanted, and she really thrived. And then she went to a public high school who knew a little bit about dyslexia and limited her accommodations, and she started to fail. And so she now chooses to do online. She found out through the pandemic that online worked better for her learning style because she could control her accommodations. And her favorite story she wanted to share is, I met Riley. A parent had decided that her daughter needed to belong to a book club. So a couple of middle school girls decided that we were going to do a book club, and we met at Barnes and Nobles to pick out our book. And we realized right there that this book club was not really going to work because no one was really interested in actually reading this book. And so we met, and what we learned is that Riley was not able to read. No one had noticed that she really wasn't able to read. She was invited to the book club because her friend begged her to come because she didn't want to go alone. And what she discovered from the other students was this assistive technology piece, and it changed her life. She now reads at grade level. She is so amazing at her assistive technology, and she just was never shown the tools to succeed. Because she was a good student, her grades looked adequate. Her intervention at school was vision therapy type techniques that were doing nothing to make her reading better. So she just wants you to realize that sometimes dyslexia can be invisible, and that you have to really listen to the student. So we'll have Meg unmute.
Hi.
Hi, Meg. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name's Meg. I'm a junior in high school. Well, technically a junior in high school. I do an early college program currently. The 3 adjectives we chose to describe me are I'm creative, adventurous, and introverted. Because honestly, I couldn't think of many others.
So Meg, tell us kind of your classroom history. Start us through the beginning and
Okay.
Today.
Yeah, so I originally started in a really conservative private school where no learning differences were acknowledged at all. So my dyslexia wasn't diagnosed until the 5th grade, even though my learning struggles were acknowledged in kindergarten. But it took a lot of pushing from my parents to even get my diagnosis. But that was not a good fit for me because that school refused to provide any accommodations to students with learning disabilities. Most students with any learning differences dropped out by 1st grade. They were pushed out by the school. So any child with even a physical difference had to drop out because they were ostracized. So I managed to hide my dyslexia for most of the time I was there up until about 6th grade, when things started getting really hard for me there. My teachers were calling me lazy, all of that stuff, because they would give me pieces of paper with the notes on it and I could not recognize the words they were saying and all that kind of stuff. And then they would tell me to look up words in dictionaries. And as most people know, you tell a dyslexic kid to look up a word in a dictionary. I don't know how to spell the word, so how am I going to look it up? So yeah, that didn't work. So I eventually moved to a public school in the 8th grade where I had my first experience with accommodations, which was absolutely incredible. I had never gotten any form of accommodation before, and suddenly I was able to get straight A's. It's like I had no clue what was happening, but I was able to rocket to the top of my class because I was allowed things that helped me succeed. After that, I tried out hybrid school where I did half online, half public school. And then for 10th grade, I did full online school because the accommodations were better. And then this year I moved to early college program where my sister had gone for accommodations because she has Crohn's disease. And I decided to give that a try. And lo and behold, college provides you with more accommodations than you could ever dream about. They just like throw everything at you. And it's like, hey, you might need this, so let's just put it on there. And I'm doing great there. So yeah, that's my story.
So Meg, we talk about that a lot, that it's just such a struggle to get the accommodations. And just how you just couldn't believe it. Like that you really got, like they just gave you extra and things that you hadn't, really thought about. And just kind of the anxiety that trying to struggle for those accommodations. Do you want to explain a little bit like how that makes you feel when even sometimes good teachers who do wonderful things don't think about these accommodations?
It's hard. Accommodations are just, they're a part of life for kids with dyslexia. You need them. It's like, my mom likes to describe accommodations as you go up to a kid with a vision issue and you take away their glasses. They're not going to be able to learn anything because they can't see. So accommodation, that's an accommodation. Glasses are accommodations, but like half the population uses glasses, so they're not put on 504 plans because so many people use them. So many people need accommodations that when you finally get them, they're just so helpful. But communicating to get accommodations is a lot harder when you're in middle school and high school, especially if you don't have a teacher who's going to listen to you. So when that happens, you really need a parent who's going to listen to the kid and stand behind them while they advocate for themselves. If the kid isn't able to advocate for themselves, it's really up to the parent to speak to the teacher. Sometimes the kid doesn't even know what they need, which happens a lot. I didn't know what I originally needed. So it really helps when that happens if the parent or the teacher just offers some things and you try out different accommodations. You just need to learn to try out some things and figure out how to work together and learn to communicate because things aren't always going to move smoothly.
And so Meg, we talk about this too. A lot of our students are said, you can have the accommodations if you ask for them or if you initiate things and you need to ask. And we talk about you being a little bit of an introvert, a little bit shy. So that journey to advocacy took you a while. That's a learned skill, right?
It took me forever.
And so when do you think you're pretty comfortable now, obviously, but when did you start to become comfortable?
Well, I'm not fully comfortable yet, and I don't know if I ever will be, but I joined IDA in the 8th grade, I believe. And that really started to help because you guys taught me a lot how to advocate for myself. And that was the year I moved to public school. So I started learning how to advocate for myself. I still get a ton of anxiety talking to authority, and that's normal. It's always going to be anxiety provoking to speak up to someone in power and tell them what you need. And if you're not anxious about it, then that's probably more worrying than being anxious. But I think a little bit of anxiety is good. That means that you're thinking about what could happen, you're preparing yourself for what could happen and what to do if something does go wrong. But you just got to keep practicing it because you're always going to have to reassert that you do need help. It's not like you're just going to say, hi, I have dyslexia, and then that's it. You're going to have to keep advocating for yourself throughout your life.
And so as we meet for our group meetings, we laugh a lot, right? So we have the wall of shame for things that have happened in school from teachers, but we also have this wall that we hold a little bit higher than that the wall of teachers that have changed your life. Because we know most teachers go into teaching to help children.
Mhm.
And sometimes they just need a little help understanding it. But can you share your kind of teacher that just really changed your life?
Yeah, so ironically, the teacher that changed my life was at that really conservative private school, and it was in 7th grade. Right before I left, she was my science teacher, and she was the first teacher I'd ever had who actually knew what a disability was. Her child had a learning disability. She was a little 3rd grader, and she gave me my first accommodation. She let me sit under my desk. It was the stupidest thing ever, but she let me sit under my desk with my gun range headphones on, just to hide away from all the stimulation around me while I worked. And that was just the simplest thing ever, but it felt so life-giving to me to have someone actually let me do something that helped me for once and not shut me down.
And we talk about sometimes everybody wants to fix us, but sometimes just letting us be, like just acknowledging, sometimes that's what we need. So sometimes we know that we're going to struggle. We know that spelling is going to be hard probably for the rest of our life, but just somebody that acknowledges that they see the work we're doing. They see the hard things that we do. They see all the effort that we're putting in. Those kind of teachers change lives.
Yeah.
So tell us about your strengths real quick.
So advocacy is definitely something that I've gotten a lot better at. And then another strength I have is organization. I've always loved organization. I love creating really detailed schedules for my day. I don't always follow them, but I like color coding things and making things super meticulous. It helps me keep things in order, as long as they're super colorful, because that really helps my brain. But I love just making things super fun.
And then our struggles. So we always talk about dyslexia is not the same for everybody, but there's a couple things that tend to be the same for all of us. So do you want to share those?
Yeah, we were going through the slides and it was consistently reading, writing, and spelling. We're pretty much always there. Sometimes we take on and off math, but yeah, reading, writing, and spelling are a pretty standard struggle with dyslexia. And then I also struggle with standing up to authority. That's probably always going to be a struggle of mine, but I'm working on it, and that's okay.
And then your assistive technology that makes your life easier.
Yeah, so usually I use Natural Reader, which is a Chrome extension that reads mostly everything to you. It's amazing. I use Bookshare and GoodNotes to read me books. Google Docs, speech to text, just to read stuff to me. I use Learning Ally, and then I love Grammarly.
And then your accommodations.
Yeah, I actually pulled out the list of my current accommodations that I'm using right now. So I have access to overhead presentation slides and stuff like that, and handouts. I have alternate testing formats and locations. I have consideration for deadline adjustments. I have e-text, so audio formats and stuff like that. I have large print for materials. I have occasional need to leave the room. I have preferential seating, and I have technology use.
So perfect.
So yeah, just have as much as you need, even if you're not gonna, I don't use all of these, but if I do need them, they're there.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot of our students, the new buzz thing is you can only have 3 accommodations. Like when we go to IEP meetings, we all chuckle about that. 3. Thank you, Meg, for sharing your story.
Yeah.
So Bella, do you want to unmute?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Bella. I go to a school for people with disabilities like dyslexia and like ADHD, and I'm a sophomore.
So when you describe yourself as shy, so we all know that about Bella, very shy, amazingly artistic. So we have monthly meetings and our students are so competitive that we have to have some kind of contest where somebody wins, and it always tends to be kind of an artist photograph, something, and Bella is amazing. And she's at school right now, so.
I am.
So Bella, we're gonna have you tell us a little bit about the classroom. And I kind of want you to share a little bit about how advocacy is a little bit hard for you and that you've really started to use it.
So let's see. I have never actually had a 504 or anything like that. I was diagnosed in the summer of 6th grade, and most of the time, a lot of when I was like in elementary school and junior high, they were like, what is dyslexia? Like, a lot of people didn't know about it, and so it made it like hard to, how to put this, it made it hard to like fit in, I guess, with everybody like being able to read higher levels than you are and not being like, oh, I need to be at this level, but I'm really here.
So do you want to share us your pool chart? That's, I think, my favorite.
Yes.
This is my
The
favorite
good old pool
fail.
chart. The good old pool chart. So in 3rd grade, we had this chart stuck on the wall where it was clearly just there, and everybody had these little swimmer clips with their names written on them. And throughout the year, as you progress in your reading level, like we would take these tests, like I think like every month to see if you were like improving. And every time you improve, they move your clip up and they're like, okay, you have to get to like this deep in the pool to be like grade level reading or like higher. And so by the end of the year, most of the kids were either like in the deep end of the pool or out of the pool on the other side. And I'm sitting here in like the 3 feet area, just chilling there.
And so just kind of that feeling of everybody knows, nobody's trying to help, but I'm just going to sink and stay in my spot, right? So that's pretty a tragic story for you.
I think at one point there's also a point where I tried to like pretend to read a higher level than I actually was, to like try with like everyone else, and it clearly wasn't working.
And so the teacher, we talked about like kind of middle school for you when you found out, kind of changed your life, the teacher that really helped you.
Let's see here. I would say when I moved to my dad's and I went to this middle school, I had these 2 teachers. It was my social studies teacher and my math teacher. And like at this time, I had already been in like Read 180 classes and stuff for a little bit. And so in things like social studies, she would give me like the notes or like things that had already been like filled out. Like if you're taking notes, you'd be like, okay, here, I wrote it down. I wrote it down for you. Here's like a list of what we're learning and stuff. And same with my math teacher. If we took math notes, she would just hand me like a printed copy that had everything already filled out.
So
I thought that was the best thing ever.
So something simple as that can just make such a huge difference, right?
Oh yeah.
So maybe let's talk a little bit about some of your strengths.
Yes. Strengths. I like art. I would say I'm very an arts and crafts person. I definitely draw a lot in my free time. I play sports, lots of sports. This year alone, during school, I think I played 3 different sports. And then I would say I can play a handful of instruments pretty decently.
And I think I'm going to mention the strength too. I see in our group meetings, you're always saying great job, good job, like everybody. I just like kind of that empathy, like you just really care about people. So struggles.
Oh yeah.
Kind of, do you want to?
Struggles, the basic reading, writing, spelling. I can't organize anything for the life of me. That's definitely trouble.
Your assistive technology that you like.
Why are you waiting?
Let's see here. Let's see, Grammarly, read and write.
I'll allow you to say you're fine.
And juggling with school and getting noise out, right? So
Oh yeah, the theater class is going to like set up for our play that we're doing next month. So.
And so I want you to, so you have an accommodation that other students I haven't seen on here is verbalizing your math. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Oh yeah, so that's actually a recent one that me and my teacher at the school found out was I have a hard time with writing down my math, but if I'm like in class and I sit in the front now, but if I just take a problem and I like say it out loud, I can go through the math problem in like under like 20 seconds if I really wanted to, or like 30 seconds. But when I have to write it down, my brain just is like, no.
And thank you, Bella, for sharing with us. Thank you for taking time from school. We appreciate you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks. So Cal, if you're there, do you want to unmute? Cal?
Yeah.
Ah, good. She was having Wi-Fi problems. So tell us a little about you, Cal.
I'm really athletic. I love music a lot. I'm constantly listening to music. I'm very adventurous. I will go outside every now and then with my dogs and we'll just like walk around our neighborhood and stuff.
And then let's talk about your classroom experience.
Okay. So this year has been pretty like easy to me, I would think. Well, I think my teacher is dyslexic, so she understands. I've had this I think this is my fourth year with this teacher because I had her a few years ago too, but then I've had her 3 years in a row now, and this is my last year with this teacher since I'm in 8th grade. And I'll be in high school next year, so I'll be in a full different school trying to get some like accommodations. But this teacher I've had for the last 3 years in a row, she's like a really understandable teacher. Like she gives me all the accommodations I need. She has dyslexia, so she understands the time like I need extra time or I need to have like a little bit further of a due date, or like tell me the books that we'll need ahead so I can find an audiobook, or she will hand me like the like hard copy and like record herself reading the book so then I can listen to it and read it, or she will like find an audiobook and send that to me so then I still have the accommodations I need. And then she will always allow me to use my laptop for taking notes, and then allow me to just like easily like whip out one of my devices and like just search something up on it or use a calculator during math, because she knows I cannot put the math on a paper very well. Like it takes me time. Like yesterday we had a math test. She allowed me to use my calculator because I was not able to like transfer, like I could do it in my head pretty easy, but then just putting it on a piece of paper I was not like able to do very well. So then she allowed me to use a calculator and I was able to do our math test yesterday. So then she's a pretty understandable teacher.
So you're one that's open about sharing the anxiety in the classroom. Can you share a little bit about that? How anxiety plays a role?
Yeah, I've always had bad anxiety, like as long as I can remember. I get anxiety just being around people like all the time. In the classroom, it's like I have a little bit more anxiety because like everybody else can be like looking at me and like there's people next to me on both sides, so they can easily see that I'm struggling like all the time. And then like a few years ago, I remember before I had my diagnosis that I had dyslexia, my teacher would like just tell me, oh, you'll be fine, just do it. She did not really care that I was struggling in class. She would more like just read the one sentence and be like, okay, there you go, now you can do your work. So then that was like a lot of anxiety. So then I would be after school, I would have a little, like a lot of homework to do. But then after school, I would have music lessons, and then I would have soccer practice, and then I wouldn't be home until like 8 p.m. And then I would come home, shower, and then try to do my homework. My mother would have to stay up with me until like 12 or 11, just to help me get my homework done for the next day, because our teacher didn't really care too much. But then my newer teachers and some of my other teachers besides that teacher would all like give me little pieces of like the assignment to get done throughout the week instead of one just each night. So I would have it ahead of time.
So really understanding that time piece. We talk about that over and over. Dyslexia is a time disability. We don't have enough time in our day to get stuff done because it just takes us longer.
Yeah.
So give us your strengths.
My strengths, I am really good at music. I've always played music as long as I can remember. Math, I'm really good at math if I'm not writing it down. Sports, I'm currently playing soccer at the moment still. Yeah.
Your struggles.
My struggles, I still can't read. Well, I can read chapter books. I just can't read them that well. I can't read my own handwriting very well. I can't spell correctly. I wasn't able to spell the until I was in 4th grade or 3rd grade. I used to have a card like next to me or in my pocket all the time, that like little flashcard that had the word the spelled out on it, because I was not able to spell the very well.
We
So
talk
then,
about how much anxiety that created. Like if people could
Yeah.
imagine not being able to spell the word the until after 4th grade.
yeah,
And you got like, oh, that's on the same page. Oh, it's on your card. Oh, it's not, like that constant, like, you should know this.
yeah,
That's very stressful, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Time management. I am horrible at managing time.
Assistive technology, what do you use?
I use Bookshare. I use Easy Spelling Aid. I use Google Doc, like sheets. I use text to speech, and then I use what is it called? Grammarly. Grammarly has
Grammarly.
saved my life this year. I swear, during the pandemic.
And then your accommodations.
My accommodations. I need audiobooks. I need text to speech. I need extra time. I need I do not know what that says. I think that says clarify.
Clarifying your directions.
Yeah, clarifying my directions. I will not understand what the teacher says the first like few times, so then I'll need them to like repeat it or explain it in a different way. And then teacher support, I need that a lot.
And I like to point out, you're in a school that's pretty open to all accommodations, has a really amazing hands-on learning,
Yeah.
outdoors all the time. You spend every, Fridays out in the environment learning, and you're still struggling, and it's okay. So I think some people think that a different school or a perfect environment is going to change dyslexia, but you kind of are in the perfect environment, and it's still a struggle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Cal, for joining us.
No
We're gonna go.
problem.
Thanks. Have Kimia turn on.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kimia. I'm a sophomore at Vancouver iTech Preparatory.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So as you guys probably know, I have dyslexia. I also have ADHD, anxiety, depression, and a memory processing disorder. Which makes everything very complicated. My things that I'm really good at are my social skills. I'm very inclusive. I have friends with different backgrounds, different, ways of life. I am basically friends with everyone, which I take pride in because inclusivity is very important to me. I'm very adventurous. I go camping, hiking. I'm going on a backpacking trip this summer, which I'm really excited for. I went on one last summer too. So that also. And artistic. I really like art. I do lots of art. I like reading books about art and poetry and stuff like that.
So tell us your classroom.
Well,
experience.
I go to a public high school and middle school, so it's combined. The school is pretty small for being a public school, but early on in my childhood, I went to a really small private school, which was very open about accommodations and having, learning disabilities and other disabilities. When I first transitioned to a public school, I had to it was different. The kids weren't as inclusive. They were like, what's dyslexia? Isn't that where you can't read or you read backwards or things like that? And I found myself, explaining it to everyone multiple times, because when I did explain, what it is, they're very set in their ways. So they didn't really understand, or they didn't really care to understand. But, I have lots of friends that have dyslexia at my school and, other learning disabilities, because I'm in the special ed program, or as I call it, SPED. I make a lot of jokes about it.
And so I think all the hard work that you put into the classroom, because you have been doing tutoring since first grade and you spend all these hours. And I think sometimes people don't understand, like, it's not just at school. You come home and you have to work harder and harder to get where you're at.
Yeah, I've been tutoring since I was in, probably even before first grade. I'd spend more time, with flashcards, learning my letters in kindergarten, stuff like that, because I didn't know my letters. Shelby is actually my tutor. She's been my tutor for many, many years. So we're getting to the end of our program, reading, writing, spelling, etc. program, which is going to be a big, kind of a weird thing, because tutoring is a part of my life. I've been doing it my entire life. I don't really, maybe I'll just keep on going to Shelby and we'll just read or something, because I don't know what to do without it. Yeah.
And so for you, your family, you have several people in your family with dyslexia.
Yeah, so my mom knew I was dyslexic when I was maybe 3. You can't get tested for dyslexia when they're that young, So, my mother has dyslexia, my grandmother, my grandfather, my brother, my sister, probably my dog. So it's definitely, and like all of my mom's family has some kind of learning disability or kind of something like that. So it's very inclusive on my mom's side.
And we talk about, like, with your family, you have a brother and sister with dyslexia, but your dyslexia is a little more severe. And so
yeah,
it's kind of like when you compare yourself to others, and then you also compare yourself to other people with dyslexia, how hard that can be.
Yeah, so my brother, he's actually coming, my parents just left like 20 minutes ago to go to Colorado to pick him up from college for summer break. He has dyslexia and ADHD, but he's also a panelist when he has time. He has dyslexia, but is not as severe as mine. It's more like he's able to keep, you know, straight A's in all of his advanced classes, and that's also because he works nonstop, you know, studying every day, hours and stuff like that. And my sister, we all have ADHD, dyslexia. So my sister also has it. Hers is also not as severe as mine or my brother's. And it was hard growing up because, you know, I'm the middle child, but having my younger sister read books that I couldn't read, even though she has dyslexia, was really tough. You know, I'm supposed to be the older sister, you know, reading her the books, reading her the chapter books, having that bonding time, but she was the one who could read higher level books, and that was really heartbreaking. Yeah.
And so I'm watching the time here, so we have time for questions. But one of the things that you noticed is your skill is this people skill, your social skill. You teachers love you, and you have this amazing support. So the pandemic was really kind of hard for you, wasn't it? This online, we always talk about different learning environments. Online did not work very well for you, did it?
No, I am a big procrastinator. So having the option of not being watched, you know, and reminded to do my work was very hard for me. Also, staring at a computer all day. You guys have probably seen me like move around in my chair. It's definitely hard to do that, especially with my depression and anxiety. My mental health was not good at all during the lockdown. I was also a freshman in COVID. It was a very big adjustment work-wise, classes, you know, standards my teachers expect from me. It was definitely a big adjustment.
Perfect. So I guess just pointing out that everyone with dyslexia is different. So we have our student Riley at the beginning, who online is amazing. You're not a fan of online, Meg likes, so just different environments for different people. Tell us a little bit about your strengths and your struggles.
My struggles, like you guys probably have noticed a theme: reading, writing, spelling, organization, also grammar, and punctuation. So I've been, you know, as I told you guys, I've been in tutoring for quite a long while. And I still, you know, struggle to this day with all of those things, even though I enjoy reading. I listen to audiobooks every day. I read books almost every day. It's something I enjoy, but it's also hard. It's a challenge.
And then for you, assistive technology, you were the biggest struggle. You did not want to use it. Explain it to us.
Yeah, when I think in 4th grade, we started, you know, integrating assistive technology into my skills for school, and I hated it. It was the worst part of my day. It was so complicated, and it made me behind in class because I had to learn new programs. It was horrible. Shelby had to, you know, fight with me every day. Kimmy, you have to learn how to use it and you have to do it. And I was just like, but I can just take notes on paper. I still prefer taking notes on paper to this day. It's more hands-on, but I use my other accommodations and assistive technology every day, especially Grammarly. You guys know everyone uses Grammarly. I use it in all of my schooling. It definitely makes my papers make sense because I can't spell anything right.
And but you still get teacher notes, right? So you take your own notes, but you still need teacher notes to get reliable. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's part of my accommodations, which I'll talk about now. So my accommodations, I have so many. My school's I have a very good my teacher, Miss Bauman, she's part of the special ed program. You know, she does all my IEP meetings and stuff like that. And she's amazing at getting me accommodations in assistive technology. She definitely is like, if you don't give this to her, we're gonna have words, you know, which is amazing. My accommodations, speech to text, audiobooks, extra time. I go to a project-based learning school. So having extra time on my projects is very, very helpful because dyslexia is a time disability. And teacher support. I often, after the kind of main learning part in class is over, or the presentations from the teachers, we'll get like, you know, stuff to work on. But a lot of the times I'll go down to the special ed classroom. So Miss Bauman and Miss Parkin, and they help me so much. I spent a lot of time there. They break down questions, they explain, they write. I say what I want to write, they write it on the board. We work through it together, making it have correct grammar, making it make sense, and then, you know, I'll type it up and submit that. So that's very helpful, having those people support me.
And I think Mrs. Bauman makes my teacher of the wall reward. Like
Definitely.
She's my idol. Just watching her work with you and the things that she does to help you, like life-changing, right?
Yes, she's
and how lucky,
so many
I feel like we're lucky to have her.
Yeah, we are
Like,
definitely
we're
lucky.
Lucky to have her. So we have 15 minutes here, a little less for questions. So we're gonna just kind of let participants ask questions if they have a question.
Absolutely. If you have a question, please throw it in the Q&A. You can welcome to throw it in the chat as well, and we'll get it thrown into the space here. But I have a question, just get us started off. And I would love to hear from all of the students. And it's just a short response. It could be a couple of words or just a short phrase. And I just had this idea of like, if we built within our system and our education programs and the access and accommodations before you have to struggle to get them. If you just walked into your schools when you were kids and you had all the accommodations that you know support you now, and you could just access them freely at that point, what would that have done to you? What would that make you feel? What would that be like? Do you have like a couple of words or just a sentence that would make about that? If you didn't have to fight for your accommodations.
It would have made me cry.
Make you cry.
Kimia?
Can you say the question again?
Yeah, if you didn't have to fight for your accommodations as a kid and if they were just readily available to you when you walked into a classroom or a school, how would that make you feel?
That would be amazing. But also fighting for accommodations has led me to be stronger, more articulate with my words, to sound professional. It has definitely led me to help others find the things they need, accommodations, speaking up for others, speaking up for myself. It's helped me a lot with that, but having those accommodations provided to me would have been amazing. It would have been amazing. Not have to fight for what everyone should have.
Yeah.
So Bella, do you want to?
Yeah, I probably would have done a lot better in school before moving, but I would have probably been really happy to not have to fight for accommodations.
And then Cal?
I think I would do a lot better in school probably, but then I probably would have more anxiety of like being around people and talking to people, because fighting for my accommodations, I've got more comfortable talking to my teachers about what I need help with. So then I feel like I would be a lot more scared if I didn't have to fight for my accommodations to talk to like higher up people than me.
And our student panel loves Deb Fitzgibbon. I think she spoke at this conference a couple times. Universal classroom design. That's what our Joel, like everybody could use. Every accommodation would make all of our lives so much easier.
Absolutely. I was thinking of UDL principles as I was thinking about this.
Yeah.
We built it to design any, so we didn't have to struggle, you know, and I think there's a way to do it. Thank you very much. I also see the power in the advocacy and how that's developed you as individuals, you know, and I think that's important, and I applaud you for that pathway. We have a question in the Q&A. It's, when dyslexia is genetic, is it more prevalent in females, or is that a myth? And who can answer that question?
That's a myth. So, and actually the myth is that it's more prevalent in boys. Boys are diagnosed more often because they seem to have more behavioral issues earlier on in the classroom, but it is definitely a myth.
Myth. Okay. Next question. Can you advocate for having accommodations without the 504 or IEP?
One of the students want to, so Bella, you have not had a 504 IEP. Has that made it difficult for you?
I would say it has been very difficult. It was difficult for me to even try and get one, especially at my old junior high. I tried so hard to get one, and it just failed every time. And then I think eventually I just kind of shut down and gave up. But then I moved out here, and I kind of being able to get the help I needed was very not helpful, but I was like so down that I couldn't get help, and then I got the help, and it, you know, boosted me up. Yeah,
I'm going to
boosted my
point out that
confidence.
it's really important to have a 504. If you have dyslexia, our student Riley, she would not qualify if she were tested now. She is above, and she would not be able to get the accommodations for college. It's really important that that documentation is so important. My daughter just had to use her documentation in her engineering exam. Without that would have been a struggle. So that documentation is so important. And that's why we push for that, our students, so they have that protection so that they can do anything they want in later life. They might need extra time on their SATs. They might need extra time if they want to take their exam to be a lawyer or a doctor, all of these things.
Thank you. There's a question that was in the chat earlier, so I scrolled back here to find it, and it says, what can a non-educator do to build a dyslexia/literacy coalition and support young people? So how can they join this advocacy work? I don't know if our students necessarily going to be able to respond to that. But.
Camille, you want to try it?
Can you like rephrase the question?
I think it's essentially what can adults do to help students like you? Just non-educator adults, like my friends that aren't teachers. Yeah.
Spread the word about dyslexia. That's so important. Talk about it, even, you know, just keep on talking about it and educating people, referring them to websites that have correct information, not myths. That's very important. There's a lot of myths out there that people, because they're not educated, they, you know, believe, like reading backwards or having the words upside down, stuff like that. That's very important. Also, coming to these conferences, having friends, just talking about it and spreading the word is so important. That's one of the best things you can do to help all of us.
Excellent. I kind of have a follow-up question. What would you say to somebody that when you come across a myth about dyslexia, it might be from a teacher, you know, an adult, and you hear a myth, and you know so much more about dyslexia than I do. What would you say to help debunk that myth, and that we could possibly use in situations like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have had many instances where I've had to tell people that those aren't true. And then they're saying, well, I read it on this website that it says it was true. And, you know, dyslexia is this specific thing that everyone has the same kind of dyslexia, and everyone, you know, is the same, and none of them can read, you know, stuff like that. And what I do is I tell them, well, I'm dyslexic. I have done numerous papers, done, you know, multiple research studies about dyslexia. I speak on panels like this. So I tell them that that's not true. I tell them what is true. I refer them to websites. Sometimes I even, if I have like a paper, or like a pamphlet, I give that to them, and just kind of clarify that, you know, this is actually not true, and that's a myth. So just educating is so important.
So you definitely encourage us to say something.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's really important.
A couple of questions in the chat, and then it's almost time to go. This might be the last one. Having dyslexia, how did you manage with math programs, especially since there is so much language in your math programs?
So Bella, this might be a good question for you since you do the verbal.
With the math, so I'm assuming you're talking about how math can get really wordy.
Yeah.
My teacher at my school at least tries to cut down how wordy it is, and she tries to not go for as wordy problems. But when they do get wordy, it always helps if I like write it out and then I kind of like talk it out, either to like myself or with her. I especially like going over it with my teacher because she can tell me if I'm like messing something up or if I'm not doing something quite correctly, and she can help me with that.
Thank you. I appreciate all of you for being here today and sharing your story with us and sharing your courage and your vulnerability with us. Seriously, we have a lot to learn. Danielle and Shelby, I also appreciate and honor the work that you've done with these students and for those students. I appreciate you very much as well. And I hope you will always make time and effort to be at the Oregon ORTIi annual conference, because this is a valuable lesson. So thank you very much. Appreciate you very much. You guys take care. Thank you, everyone.